Hi, and today I'm going to be telling the parody of Snow White. As of usual, all my story parodies contain language and content that may offend or shock some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Once upon a time, in medieval Germany, there was a king and a queen. Now the queen was a complete asshole, but the king was a really nice guy, and they gave birth, the queen gave birth to a daughter named Snow White, but shortly right after Snow White was born, her good father, the good king, passed away. Now, Snow White's mother was incredibly jealous of her. She was the evil queen, and all she cared about was how pretty she looked. She wanted to be the prettiest girl in the whole kingdom, and she really resented the fact that Snow White was born with red lips, white skin, and black hair that were so beautiful. So she said about Snow White that her lips were red as blood because she thought it was a sick, disturbing joke to compare the lips on her daughter to the stuff that oozes out of you when you're dying or injured. So, over the years, Snow White, was abused and just not so much hurt, but like neglected and bad-mouthed by the evil queen, her mother. However, when Snow White became a teenager, she walked over to the wishing well and she sang like in the Disney movie, I'm wishing for the one I love. And in that brief moment, she saw Prince Charming, and he sang that one song. But that was the only time they would see each other for a while. So, one time, the evil queen decided she didn't even have a mirror, because in this story, she doesn't have a magic mirror because she just looks at people, including her own daughter, to see who's the prettiest, and she just decides who's the fairest one of all. And she thought that Snow White was more beautiful than she was, so she wanted to have a plan to kill Snow White. So she asked a hunter if he could go with his gun, because even though this was the Middle Ages, he had a gun. She said for him to go and kill Snow White so that she would be the prettiest, and then told her to bring back Snow White's heart so she could eat it. So the hunter decided to go out because he'd never even seen Snow White, so he didn't know. He thought maybe he didn't know that the evil queen is evil. The evil queen had lied to him and told her that she was hideously deformed and ugly, so he thought, okay, maybe I'm putting this chick out of her misery. But when he saw Snow White, he saw how beautiful she was, and he said, I can't shoot this girl. So, of course, the hunter was also kind of an asshole in that sometimes he did shoot people and animals just for the heck of it, and if he didn't like somebody's face, he would rain bullets in it. But he was kind of good in some ways in that if you were beautiful enough, if he liked your face, he didn't shoot you. But if you were ugly according to his standards, he would blast you to bits. So he said to Snow White, oh, you're too beautiful. I was going to kill you, but you're way too beautiful to shoot lead into, so go along, go into the woods, and you have to run so the evil queen, your mother, because she wants to kill you. She told me that. And Snow White said, oh, so that's why she's been so neglectful and verbally abusive to me. I better run. So he said, yes, you better, because otherwise your mom will kill you. So Snow White ran into the forest, and then so the woodsman, hunter's also known as a woodsman, he looked around and then he noticed 3 girls who he considered ugly, so he shot all of them to death. However, he was found guilty in the court of the law, and they executed him by frying him in the electric chair. So Snow White ran deep into the forest, and then she came upon a cottage that looked pretty neat, and she didn't know it at first, but this was the cottage of the Seven Dwarves. So, and one thing she also didn't know is that all of the Seven Dwarves had really bad gas. So she walked into the Seven Dwarfs' cottage and saw that, oh, it was a little bit untidy. So she asked her friends, the woodland animals, to tidy it up. And some of her woodland animal friends just decided to make it dirtier by shitting into it. And she said, no, 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 don't shit on the rug. Especially don't shit in the kitchen. That's not clean. So they put up a hissy fit and said, "We want to shit in here." And she had to convince them several times not to shit inside the Seven Dwarfs' cottage. So they said, "Oh, all right, if it's really that, dirty and gross, then we won't do it." So, and then they told her, "But we're going to make you clean it up." So Snow White said, "Fair enough," and she cleaned it up. And the woodland animals from then on promised not to ever shit or piss inside the Seven Dwarfs' cottage anymore. So, when the Seven Dwarfs came back after a day of mining precious stones, they noticed that Snow White was in their house, and they said, "Oh, we don't know you. This is, why'd you barge into our house?" And she said, "Oh, I don't mean any harm. I'm running away from my mother, who's an evil queen who wants to kill me. And I'm hoping one day to find my prince, who I met one time, but I haven't met since then." And they said, "Oh, okay. We'll take care of you and protect you from your evil mother, who's also an evil queen. So, and we'll help you find your prince one day." So, she stayed in the cottage of the Seven Dwarves, and there was, one night when, Snow White and the Seven Dwarves were, having a party. They were singing this silly song, like in a Disney film, where they're yodeling, singing, and dancing, and it was really fun until suddenly Snow White started hiccuping, and then all the Seven Dwarfs started burping and farting and stinking up the place. But then Snow White felt this gas build up into her intestines until she let rip, one of the biggest, most forceful farts that the Seven Dwarfs had heard, or smelled. And Snow White's farts smelled so much worse than the farts of all the Seven Dwarfs combined, even though the farts of all the Seven Dwarfs smelled really bad. So basically the whole house really stunk for 3 days, but Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs didn't mind. And it was right after that their party with the silly song being sung was ended by that, torrent of gas, that Snow White sang, "Someday my prince will come," to the Seven Dwarfs, while obviously the place still stunk, because it wasn't going to, smell normal for another 3 days. But the dwarves didn't care. They found it very heartwarming when Snow White was singing about her dream to meet her prince. So, meanwhile, the woodsman had come back with the heart of one of the other girls. Actually, no, he didn't come back because he was dead. He was fried in the electric chair. Of course, even though the evil queen ruled this kingdom, she didn't really know that. There was a separate court of the law that didn't have to do with the monarchy, that was actually democratic, that, tried him. And there were electric chairs in this story, even though the electric chair and electricity hadn't even been invented in the Middle Ages. So, when the evil queen got word that he had been killed, he had been given capital punishment, she was enraged. And she found out later that Snow White was alive, just because even though she didn't have a magic mirror, she assumed that since he had been killed, and the forensic evidence was that the 3 girls killed, none of them were Snow White, and Snow White had essentially gotten away, that enraged the queen so much that she decided to go down into the creepy cellar of her castle and drink a potion to make her look really ugly, like an ugly witch. Although that is kind of a really hurtful stereotype of Wiccans. However, the evil queen didn't care. She didn't care about how Wiccans and other pagans were being burned at the stake in her country by the church. So, in fact, she often encouraged it because she was such an asshole. So, she thought, why not kill Snow White and, encourage more of the burning and torture of the pagans in my country? I kill so many birds with one stone in that. So, she decided to go down into her, so she drank the potion that made her look like an ugly stereotype of a witch. And then she decided to make a poison apple, and while looking at it, she said there was an antidote, because the prince, if a handsome prince kisses Snow White and she falls in love, then she'll wake up again and ride off into the sunset with her handsome prince on their white horse. So, she figured, I don't even know where the handsome prince is. I'm sure he won't find her. So, on the next day, she knocked on Snow White's on the door to the Seven Dwarfs' cottage. The Seven Dwarfs are away mining for precious stones again when she did that. And Snow White opened the door and she said, "Hi, I got a delicious candy apple for you. You want to have it?" And Snow White said, "Wow, you're pretty ugly. Looks like you're promoting a stereotype of the Wiccans who are, why was my mother burning them? It's like, my mother was encouraging the religious fanatics in my country to burn them to death and to do horrible things to them." "Oh, they didn't do anything wrong." And she said, "Aw, I just like to look like this. Or not like, no, I don't like to look like this. This is just how I look. It's just a coincidence. I'm actually not Wiccan. I'm agnostic." So she said, "Here, eat this apple. This is delicious. It's got a delicious candy coating." So Snow White said, "Well, that looks good, so it can't be too bad." She ate the apple and she fell into a coma. And so then the evil queen just laughed, and then she decided to run off. But then what happened is that, the seven dwarves saw her, and they were like, "Oh shit, she's gonna kill Snow White." So they ran, when on their way home from the mine, they and the woodland animals saw her, and then they went after her. They just decided they beat her and bludgeoned her to death, so they killed her ass. So then they ran home to their cottage and like, "Oh, I hope it's not too late." Now they saw Snow White in a coma, and at first they were like, "Oh shit, what happened?" And then they noticed the apple. But Doc, the dwarf, was a medical expert in this particular type of potion. And he said, "Wait a minute, I know about this poison. It won't kill her if the prince marries her. And she's just in a coma. Don't worry, guys. I'm gonna look and find the prince." So he got out his iPhone and he looked on MapQuest for where Prince Charming lived, and then they found that the prince lived in a nearby castle, in Austria, right outside Germany. So they went over. They rode the deer all the way over to Austria and said, "Hey, handsome prince, Snow White, I think you met her when you were teenagers." And he said, "Oh yeah, I remember. She's cool. I hope to marry her. I have a mad crush on her." And they said, "Yeah, well, she's in trouble. If you come, but she'll be okay if you come and kiss her. She fell into a coma because her evil queen mother over in Germany poisoned her with a poison apple. But if you kiss her, she'll wake up again, and then she'll marry you." So the prince said, "Okay." So he got on his white horse and then rode over with the dwarves on the deer and with all the other woodland animals running back. He he came over to her cottage, kissed Snow White, and at first Snow White was like shocked. Why'd somebody kiss me? I wasn't even expecting that. But then she looked up and saw her handsome prince, and she said, "Finally, my prince has come." So the seven dwarves and the woodland animals and Snow White and the prince and his white horse all celebrated. And Snow White got married to the prince the next day, and then they all listened to riffing by Van Halen, freed all the whales from marine animal prisons, and then expelled the tapeworms from everyone whose gut had tapeworms, and the tapeworms were then reincarnated into much more beautiful animals. The fucking end.